Yes, indeed. All righty. Oh, my goodness gracious. Here we are. Greetings from Somerville, live in Las Vegas.
Vegas, baby.
Vegas, baby.
Yeah.
Sitting here with Jared Freid.
Thank you for having me, man.
My goodness, this is exciting. This is full circle now. I have been on your podcast.
Sure.
And you, in fact, are one of the people who inspired me to get started on one. So now I feel flattered to have
I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, okay.
Well, we have a lot to talk about, and that's one of the topics. I always run by my guests. I say, what do you want your title to be? Because I'm trying to make these about, you're of course a fellow comedian. We're working together in Vegas this week, but that's not what I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
I always try to find an angle or a thing about someone, and rather than ask you the title, your title, I've decided on two for you, and then you can tell me whether or not they're correct.
Okay.
So the first part of what I want to chat about, I've called you Social Media Presence Jared Freid.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why I'm doing that. You hear social media personality a lot.
Sure.
And I think of those people as existing almost only online. And you, to me, and maybe I'm wrong, and you'll tell me whether or not I'm wrong, but you to me are much bigger than that. You have a grand social media presence, as is very important these days, and you do it better than anyone I've ever seen. But you're also very much a real person in the world. You perform every single night. We both work at the Comedy Cellar in New York. Right now we're performing at the MGM in Vegas. You are out there with the people, interacting with the people. So I meant that as a compliment.
I'll take it that way,
okay.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
I have enough of an ego to believe that, you know?
Fair enough. So you are a social media presence and dating guru is the second part of what we're going to chat about. But let's start first things first. This is a special week for me. I am this is my 15-year anniversary working in Las Vegas. Yeah, it was 15.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. 15 years ago, I got called to be the MC at the Tropicana.
Wow.
For $1,000. I had to fly myself out.
Yeah.
And I probably lost money after I discovered video poker.
Sure.
But that was my 15 years ago. And I'm sure we're probably not making that much more these days, are we?
It's 15 years. Oh, my God. What happened to inflation?
It's exactly so. That the comedy business didn't keep up. But the reason, what stunned me about this week was not only was that exciting, but what I did work-wise during that week. For our listeners, Jared and I are both hard workers. We're self-driven, our own boss. We like it that way.
Sure.
And we both work hard at our business. But what I did versus what you've done this week has been hysterical for me to watch. And I'll tell you about my day. 15 years ago as a comedian, I would get up and I would get my coffee and I would work on jokes. That's kind of all there was to do as a comedian.
Yeah.
It's post-90s still. Your internet is sort of coming along, but not really MySpace, I guess, and some early adopters. But in general, it wasn't a part of the mainstream business yet in 2003. So comics wrote jokes during the day and did them at night. And then you got up the next day, got my coffee, wrote my jokes, did it. And then you hope to get on a late-night show or an HBO special and then get, hopefully, a sitcom or write for a show. That was, I'm simplifying, no question.
For sure.
But that was kind of all there was.
Of course.
This week alone, I've watched you, and you can tell me, I have watched you make at least, I think, 2 podcasts that I know about.
Okay, yeah, I put out...
You tell us, actually. Go ahead.
I have... So, I mean, this is kind of embarrassing now.
I don't want to embarrass you.
Well, I have 2 podcasts. So one is called the J-Train Podcast. Let you guys behind the curtain a little bit.
Yes.
Mike just had a major spill.
A big water spill. I think we're good.
But it's just water. I think we're good.
We didn't hit any of the main
stuff. Some of those
stuff.
Notes... We're watching. I'm worried about the notes. All those jokes.
Yeah, no, those are my...
I gotta let you guys know a tsunami just hit Somerville Studios, and now he's calling people.
This is a perfect segue, by the way.
This is a phone is going off.
This is a perfect for technology.
This is hilarious. I just want to let everyone know that a water spilled and a domino effect of what's going on right now. The phone is going off. It feels like I feel like I'm in an office where the papers have collapsed all over the secretary.
I unplugged the phone.
The phone has just been unplugged. Water everywhere. We can pause. Do you want to pause?
I do not want to pause because this is the absolute most perfect intro to this episode that we're about to talk about.
He has 7 computers, wires everywhere.
We're about to talk about social media. and we're about
I'm
to
happy
talk.
the notes were taken off the table and it was the biggest glass of water I've ever seen spilled. Never has a glass had more water in it than the one that just spilled everywhere.
I could not think of a better segue into
the phone going off.
I
That was
unplugged
wild.
it. I had
Yeah,
to unplug the phone because I could not get it to stop. I'm here trying to talk about how I'm trying to catch up with technology and social media.
Yeah, I haven't heard a phone dial tone in 5 years, and then all of a sudden it just won't stop going off
I've never
from a
seen
spilled
that
glass of water.
before. Only I could do this.
It felt like you were in the platoon, and someone yelled Somerville, and then just all stuff went everywhere. You
and
know,
I was so nervous about having you because you're so up on all this that you taught me how to do Instagram stories last night. I mean, and I'm trying to be like hip and cool. I got a microphone. Here we go.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's not even cool. Like, my head is dug into this stuff all day long, and it's like, and also I've just figured out. Like, I think nowadays is just easier. Like what you're saying right now to me, like sitting in a hotel room, write jokes, go do the show. Like, I don't know how what you did all day. Like, how do you can only write for so long. I mean, I've sat down and written every day, but I sit down and I put a timer down for 20 minutes.
Right.
Just so I get the 20 minutes in.
So you know you did
So I don't
that.
know I did it.
Exactly.
So, I mean, to me, I think what the thing is, like, I get nervous that I'm not writing enough because I'm doing all the other stuff.
Right.
I mean, but also you have to... when I first started this, I knew, the reality of this was, okay, I knew I was funny for my friends, but
Right.
like I was going to work at being funny for an audience. And while I worked on being funny for an audience, I was going to put myself out there to people that were a lot like me.
Right.
And that was like my whole thing. I was like, I'm going to put out to people that I would be friends with stuff that I think is funny.
Right.
And the internet makes that easier. So I started a podcast called the J Train Podcast. That comes out twice a week. And then I have another podcast called the You Up Podcast, and that's once a week. So that's 3 podcasts. Then I have a Patreon page where people who pay a little bit of money each month get extra podcasts, extra content.
Right.
So I do a write-up every Monday about the podcast episode that comes out on Mondays. Then I've been doing, this week, we've been trying to get more people to join Patreon because I do think that's kind of the future. So and also, for me, if it can put money in my pocket on a monthly basis that
Absolutely.
that just comes in no matter what for work I'm already doing.
Monetizing it, I mean, that's
Finding
everyone's
a way.
big challenge, and I was so impressed to hear that you have done that. I mean, you've actually started to...
I mean, it's not a lot of people, it's not a lot of money, but it's, I'm trying to churn it. So now what I've done, because I had the extra time here, I was like, okay, I'll do a daily Coffee with J Train. So now I've done 4 of those for Monday through Thursday, and then I've done the 3 other podcasts that are coming that I did last week to prepare for this week. So last week I taped like 10 hours of podcasts.
Wow.
So to be ahead of this week and get last week's in. So it's and then I wrote something for a website and gave them an article and did that and and then I just sit there all day long just tweeting, making fun of stuff and putting on Instagram and Instagram stories and stuff like it, just because I like to. I mean, this is what I like doing.
Yeah.
This is why I got into comedy, was because I liked being funny for friends.
And what I love about it is that you've done a perfect job of that. You have people responding. I've seen your social media. I've seen the responses, the interaction. Yeah. It's not just doing it to do it. You're actually, people are laughing, people are responding, they're interacting with you during the day. And another thing I like about it, I said how we don't have bosses per se, but in a way I've always felt like the audience becomes your boss and a motivating factor.
Yeah.
And when I talked about 15 years ago, you write jokes and then you do them at night. Your point is right. How many can you write? And then also, you don't have to do it. When all you're doing is going back to the club and doing it and then going to a new city the next week, you can get lazy and no one's really going to call you out.
Yeah.
But you have people who, online and all over the world, last night at the show we had some military guys who knew who you were. And they listen to your stuff online. It's an important part of their week. They get bored on the base. And that to me that's awesome because you really are answering to somebody.
Well, I think with the internet people, and the thing is, like, I talk like I have a lot of followers. To me, I know, like, I have an okay amount, like, to some, but like, there's people out there with like hundreds of thousands of people following them, and I don't have that. But I do. The podcast has a nice following, and like the new one has has gotten even bigger than my old one. So like that's cool. But I do feel like I have like a responsibility because I do talk about. None of my podcasts are stand-up comedy driven.
Right.
You know, it's I'm a comedian who does this show.
Right.
So when I ask them to come to shows, I do feel like some of them walk in being like, what
Right.
you know, what's this gonna be? So like, what's this whole thing gonna do?
Right.
And I do understand that, and they're bringing their friends.
Yeah.
So you know, a lot of them. I remember I opened for a comic once. I opened for Steve Ranazizi, and he was on the League, and he was like, some of you, and I remember he did a whole bit, and it made so much sense. He was like, one of you loves me, and he's like, one of you in your group loves me, and then you came in a car, we're on the way here, they were like, who are you bringing us to see? And I never thought of it that way. Now that's all I think about. There's one person that if they did come, they're like, come on, this guy gives dating advice, and someone's like, who?
Yeah.
He's single. It's, you know, what does he know?
What does he know?
You know, and then they're like, no, it'll be funny. And you have to make sure that person looks good. So,
right.
And especially because I'm nobody. So it's not like I have this, like, name that everyone's like, oh, I heard of him. You know, it's like you either follow or you don't.
Right.
So, and kind of in this world we're in today where, like, everyone's audience is, like, niched off.
Yeah.
And they're super deep with you, but, like, maybe they're not that big, but if they follow you and love you, that audience can keep you going. So that's a big part of it.
And what you're doing is exactly that. I think it's you're really grassroots, you know. Your followers are real followers and real fans. You're not Kim Kardashian with just a zillion, you know. I mean, that is what it is.
I'd like to be Kim. You know,
I've seen your butt. No, but I mean, it feels to me like everyone on your list means it. You know, if it's not 8 million or 10 million. And the other thing I like is that you are getting by, not getting by, you are earning it on your merits and on your talent. And I think that's also a lot to be said for that. When someone doesn't know who you are, like, all right, well, who the hell is this guy to tell me? And then they're like, oh, if they're buying it.
Well, that's the other thing you see with a lot of internet people, and we talk about it as comics all the time, where it's like, oh, the internet person gets a following and is like, I can make money on the road. And then you look at them, you're like, you're wasting the spot that would have gone to another comic. But then, you know, I think, like, for me, I was in New York. Stand-up was always like a piece of the wheel.
Right.
So it was always like, I have to get good at this, and this will be the thing that I'm in the basement working on the heavy bag.
Right.
While upstairs I'm putting on the show.
Right.
And, you know, and then when it comes time, I'll come up from the basement and I'll, you know, show off my stuff.
Right.
And
show what you got and
show
get
what I
back
got.
down.
And, you know, a lot of this stuff, like with what you're saying, like when you came out here 15 years ago, you got in a car by yourself. There was no one here. There's no phone to connect to home. There's no way to put out material to get people to watch you. You know, you had to like go and be on a TV show and then go on the road to get anyone to come see you on the road or go on a radio show and all that stuff. And now I can do that all from my phone.
Yeah.
And I kind of that's always what I've tried to do is just get more people involved with what I do and just do stuff that I have fun doing. I love doing the stuff that I do. Like I've always none of it feels like I'm doing any work. Like the podcast,
it doesn't look like it either.
Yeah, like and answering to those people over podcasts like. The podcast started out a certain way, then became something else. It always is the case.
Yeah.
So it's if I'm not, and I remember like a few years in, someone asked me to do this like prank video, and these prank videos were online, and they're probably still online. I really didn't have any interest in doing it, but I was like, oh, it's a couple bucks coming in, whatever. Yeah. It's for this internet company, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess I'll do it. And I remember going there and doing it and being like. Annoyed the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't do this to ever be annoyed.
Right.
You know, like I didn't do comedy to sit there and go, why am I doing comedy? So like, I remember after that, I was like, I'm just going to do stuff that I have fun doing.
Do your thing. And that's, now more than ever, it's so possible to do exactly that. You just, I mean, like, you can go out and make what you want, how you want, when you want. You used to hear that comics used to talk about getting a deal and going and doing a sitcom or, you know, just at least not being on a sitcom, but getting a deal and going through the rounds of rewrites and having corporate tell you to change this, fit. And then being so happy to get back to the clubs and be like, oh, finally I can do what I want, how I want, and no one's telling me what to do. And, I mean, now the options are tenfold from that.
Well, it's funny that that's kind of changed to be a little bit reversed.
It's like, really true, isn't it?
You know, a lot of clubs now, you know, you can't say whatever's on your mind.
That's really
They
true.
won't book you again. If we came to Vegas and started talking about, Trump this, Trump that,
Right.
they're not going to have me back.
And to take that a step
but
further,
online you could do that.
I would say, so on the other side, the industry side has changed a bit too, where guys like Louis C.K. got a show and they said, "You do what you want; it's none of our business."
Sure.
So that really is an interesting thing.
It's weird because
you go make your show. Who are we to tell you?
Well, that's the thing. It's audience first.
Yeah.
And we see that with people that aren't good stand-ups getting on the road because they have the audience.
Yeah.
But then we see it with, you can say whatever you want to your audience because
Right.
they'll lift you up.
Right.
I mean, and you come to a club where I'm not the headliner. I'm just coming to do jokes, whatever. I have to make sure they have a good time.
Right.
So you're going to do the act that makes sure they have the best time.
That you're having fun.
And I can have fun doing that, but it's just interesting, the dynamic of it all. And like I do everything like those online things, like and I do see a lot of people that got big online and then come do stand up, and I think it's just always been important for me. Like I always wanted to be a good stand up.
Well, that's nice to hear, and I think a lot of you want to be East Coast versus West Coast and everything, but I think that's the nice thing about New York comedy is really is New York comics, guys who cut their teeth in the East Coast, really want to be good comics and be able to back it up when they sell out a room. And I think you're right. That's not to say anything bad about someone who, hey, you got big online and now you're selling out a theater. God bless you. I wish I had that problem. But you're right. You want to be able to bring something to the table, not just a 6-second Vine video.
I mean, I always say that I always think that those people that they'll do a year.
Yeah.
They'll do a year on the road and then they'll be like, I don't think they have, I don't think those people generally have the love of it or the respect for it.
No.
I think that makes it so they are like, I think I'm out.
Sometimes it's their manager telling them to do it. Go do stand-up and go collect some money.
I had a guy that got a big following, and I was talking with him, and he's like, and I've been doing open mic since minute one.
Yeah.
So I've been doing stand-up. It'll be 8 years in April.
Nice.
And I remember this is a story that was told to me about me. But I remember I was going to 3 to 4 open mics right from day one.
Nice, good for you.
And I mean that's just what it is. That's what I thought it was. And then you'd see people not doing that and complaining.
Right.
And you're like, where are you coming off? And I think that's the thing with stand-ups when they all stand-ups will say they're not funny.
Right.
No stand-up's going to go, well, I'm funny.
Right.
Because we have such a respect. But I'm saying we have such a respect for how hard it is to work out a joke because we put so much time ourselves, so who are we to say how good we are?
Right.
When we do believe we're good, but we're in the grand scheme of good.
No, absolutely, yeah. And you always want to get better.
Totally. And I remember there was one day it was snowing out in New York and I would go to the Eastville open mic every Monday and I would go to the Laugh Lounge open mic every Monday.
Wow.
So I would go, and the Eastville was at 5 and the Laugh Lounge I think was at 6.
Okay.
So I would get down at the Eastville at 4, put up a list, put my name at the top of the list, then walk to Laugh Lounge, put up another list. I would always hold in my backpack. I had a thing of tape and I had a white line paper. So then I would put up the list at Laugh Lounge on the door because they weren't open yet. And I would tape it up and I'd put my name at the top of the Laugh Lounge. So one day I'm walking to Eastville, I put up the list, I put my name first because I don't want to wait. I want to get my 3 in and then go to bed.
Yeah.
That's always my goal.
Yeah.
So I was like, if I can get the 5, the 6, and the 8 o'clock mics, I'll be done by 9. I got my work done for the day.
Yeah.
So I go to the Eastville, I put up the list at 4, and I start walking over, whatever the times were. I start walking over, and it's in the snow. It's crappy out, whatever. So I was probably 3 years into comedy. And walking by me is Emma Willman.
Yeah.
And Emma is so funny, so great. And she's walking by me, and then I just look at her, and the snow's coming down really hard. And I look at her, I go, Laugh Lounge? And she goes, yeah. She goes, Eastville? I go, yeah. And we just keep walking.
I love it.
And she's going to sign up at Eastville. I go, to the list that I put up, and I'm going to sign up at Laugh Lounge at the list that she put up.
Yeah.
And I always think of that moment because now Emma's done Colbert and is done
She's doing great.
the Netflix 15s.
Yeah.
And I remember, I just remember that, Emma told me that story. I didn't remember that story, and she was like, don't you remember? Told it to me, and I was like, and I remember, when I heard she got the 15s, I was like, those, I wrote her a text being like, those snowy days mattered, you know,
Right.
like something along those lines. And
Right.
then I always think of that when I'm like, that's how hard comics want it. That's how much you're going to go out in the snow. You're going to put up a list to go do
Absolutely.
5 minutes. 5 minutes at each of these places. And I remember
Absolutely.
there was one guy I opened for who got a big following, and now he's starting to tour a little bit, so he asked me to open for him. And you know, of course, I just want to do stand-up.
Yeah.
I just want to do my act.
Yeah.
And you know, he was kind of prodding me on how much, you know, how many times I go on stage and what, you know, goes into it.
Yeah.
And I do the internet stuff, so I know
Yeah.
what goes into the internet stuff a little bit. Like, I've danced in that world, but I also, like, I'm a stand-up. So I remember he was like, you know, he was kind of asking me, like, how many times a night, and I was like, well, I think you got to go up every night. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, 2 times, 3 times a night. You got to get up. I go in a week, you should be working on a new minute a week.
Right.
Whether it's good or bad, just something new that you should be trying to put in there. And because I took that from Bill Burr. Bill Burr says a minute a week, you got a 52 a year, there's a new hour.
Yeah.
And I love that because I love, like, the little, like, inching ahead.
And it gives you some structure. Some,
Totally.
you know,
In an unstructured world.
Exactly.
And so, and then he was like, we had that conversation, and I kind of felt, I was like, that was a kind of weird. And then, like, there was like a couple nights, or like a couple weeks later, I see him again. He's like, you still think you have to do it every night? And I'm like,
he
yeah.
wants you to let him off the hook.
Well, that's the thing, you know, and what he's saying in that moment, I know he doesn't mean it this way, but what he's implying is that he has more talent within him than I have, and that you have to, and not, he doesn't mean it that way, but this is what you mean when you say that.
Right.
I'm not saying you meant it, but I'm telling you what you meant.
This is what you meant.
And when you say that disrespects all of those walking in the snow moments.
Yeah.
That's saying that you just are talented.
Yeah.
You don't need the work. You're just God's gift to comedy.
Yeah.
You can go up twice a week, figure out a new 10,
Right.
and then you'll be good for the special.
Right.
And I'm saying I don't think that's how it works.
No.
And I think I'm right.
Right.
You know, like, I don't think you're right. And I think that's what,
even
I think the internet world, when you get the following, or when you get the following first, you forget. You're like, oh, this is just how it goes. I get the following, then I'll go up and they'll love me. And it's like, maybe it happens for 1 or 2 people, but I don't think that's, I can't bank on that. That's not going to
exactly. And then at the end of the day, all that matters is how you work and what works for you. And you know, even if there is some truth to that, some guys are naturally more talented, maybe can create bits more quickly. Imagine how darn good you'd be if you did then the work.
Sure.
You know, rather than say, "Oh, I can get by." Well, then really crank, and you'll be you'll be worth a lot of money.
I think, like, you know, success can be, like, you know, a bad thing for comedy too. So it's like, you get, if you can just tour right away,
right?
Like, well, that's how it goes. They come to me. And some of it's good.
Yeah.
Some of it you need to be like, no, this bit's right.
Right.
You know, you need the delusion a little bit, but not so much of it that it, you know.
No, definitely. Well, that brings me to, speaking of being good at things, the second thing I called you.
Mike is still cleaning up water.
Still cleaning up water. Still, it's just, we're going to have the cleaning lady up.
It's so funny.
Oh, my goodness. The second title for you was, quote, the dating guru.
Okay.
And now let me explain that one. This one's fun for me because, as I think you know, I used to be a, quote, relationship expert. And I say quote because by no means was I an expert.
But you come on my show and we give dating advice, and you're
true.
amazing.
Well,
you always have great advice.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. And I guess that's why I got Glamour Magazine's dating columnist, Jake. I did Wingman, I did all that stuff. And to me, expert always implied PhD or some sort of training. I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
I just had sort of an affinity for advice. The women liked what I had to say during shows about my relationships, so I fell into that stuff. And you seem, in my estimation, to be a bit of a similar path.
For sure.
You're live tweeting Bachelor with a lot of great commentary. You were on at least one of the podcasts specializes, right?
Well, what happened was, and this is kind of I've always had a lot of growing up, I had a lot of female friends.
Right.
People, for whatever reason, would always come, and I think you have this quality too, where it's like you. The key, I think, I've thought a lot about, like, why I'm not an expert. I don't know, but I give a lot of advice. Right. And I think people come to me for advice and probably go to you to advice because they know they're not being judged, and they don't think, and the advice isn't given with, here's why you've done it wrong.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people want when they get advice. They want the truth. They want an honest reaction. But they don't want you to look at them and go, well, how could you have done it that way?
What's wrong with you, idiot?
What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So I think...
Yeah.
And they want an open mind and for someone to listen. A lot of people give advice without listening because they want to be the person that gives advice.
Right.
They want to be that person who saved the day. And you see it from a lot of women, too.
Right.
Like women
it's
especially.
About them,
They want to say, well, I know love. Guys don't want to know love. Guys don't want to know relationships. We want to be aloof.
Right.
So that we can blame our aloofness for or mess up. So the J Train podcast, what I've done for a lot of like the internet stuff, I've always just tried to leverage people with bigger followings so that I could take from them the people that liked me.
Okay.
So I was always writing for websites. So it started with Weekly World News, which was like the bad boy stuff.
Gotcha.
So they were like, what would you want to write? And I was like, dude dating with J Train. So it was like guy-driven dating advice.
Okay.
And then wrote that for a while. Then I made this video, and Bro Bible is another online men's type of
Bro Bible. I love
Bible. It's still around. And then I went to them and I was like, hey, I want to bring this column to you. They're like, okay, bring it here, but we want. So then I started writing like a weekly for them.
Right.
Then I went to the Sports Tribune, something. It was a buddy of mine's brother's site. Went to them, and then Total Frat Move was this like bigger site that was growing, and they're out of Austin. And I went on a bachelor party in Austin, and I had emailed those guys like, hey, I'm in Austin, can I come meet with you guys? So I went off the bachelor party.
Wow, you're at a bachelor party. Look at that work ethic.
Got in a cab, went and met with them, and they were like, and they knew me from these videos I have out, and you can find them called Frat Dude Goes To, where I was act like the biggest frat guy alive and interview people.
Yeah.
So they liked those videos. So I went to them and I was like, hey. And I walk in the office and they're like, Frat Dude. And I'm like, hey guys. So I was like, I want to write a weekly column for you. I want to bring what I'm doing to this already to you guys.
Yeah.
And I kind of bartered in retweets because Twitter was huge. So I'd be like, okay, I want this many retweets, this many posts on Facebook, this many that.
I love it.
And that's kind of how we worked out. And I go, also, I want to do a podcast. And they were like, what's a podcast? And I'm like, perfect.
Yeah.
And this is a while back now, and I just loved. I'm from Boston. Talk radio in Boston's huge.
Yeah.
We listen to it every minute of every day in my house.
Right.
So I love sports talk, and I love talk radio.
Yeah.
So I've listened every night of my since I've been 12 years old, probably listening to talk radio to go to bed.
Right.
So I was like, I want to do it, and I was early on podcasts just as a subscriber.
Right.
So I always knew that I was like, I want to have a podcast. And then I was looking for someone, again, to leverage their audience, to hear me.
Sure.
So you get to, just like a TV show.
Yeah.
Except for the internet. So I went to them. They're like, what's a podcast? I was like, they're like, well, hold off on the podcast. You write for us. We'll see how this does. So we do the columns. Those would do really well for them. The comments where TFM used to have this like vicious commenting thing where it was just like them being mean for sport.
Okay.
No one was mean. Like, people just liked it.
Wow.
And so then I gained a lot of trust with them. And then in Stand Up New York was opening a podcast studio. I saw that. I said, hey, I got a promoter. You guys produce. I'll host.
I love it.
And then we worked out a deal. And then it was called the TFM podcast.
All right.
So the plan was to just talk about stuff from the site. And I started an email account. The way I remember it, I'm just trying to remember. So it was going to be talking about stuff from the site with a different comic guest.
Right.
Basically like Howard Stern's news section.
Okay.
But for Total Frat Move. Perfect. So that was the plan. And that was kind of slow. I didn't like the pace of it. But I also listened to Tony Kornheiser, on PTI. I listened to his radio show. And he does this mailbag segment at the end of his show where people would just email in, and they were very much involved with the show because there was certain language to the show. So I made an email account for the show called tfmpodcast@gmail.com, and I go, send in anything you'd like.
Yeah.
And people started sending in questions.
I love it.
And it was just like everyday life questions, a lot of dating stuff, but and then we go over the questions. The show then flopped.
Okay. So
now it was an all-question show with some news at the end. Flip-flop.
Gotcha.
And this is what we do. We go on stage, you try a joke,
right.
It half works, you're like, let me switch the order, let me switch the wording. And I was just doing that with the podcast.
Well, perfect,
and then very quickly it turned into an advice show.
Wow.
So then at some point, TFM wanted to start more podcasts. They wanted their name back.
Right.
I had developed a nice little audience there, so I said, okay, we changed to the J Train podcast.
Oh, okay.
Amicably, split up.
Right.
And then people have just been sending in emails. I get like 50 a week.
Wow.
And for a long time now, and a lot of dating, and I think the thing is, I'm not an expert, but I'm a commiserator.
Okay.
Like, I'm going through the stuff
right.
that they're going through. Like, you're single, I'm single,
Yeah.
we're all going through this
Right.
stuff together.
It's a guy in the trenches with you.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
And I'm the product of timing. Yeah. I was in college during Facebook. Got out of college, people were using dating websites.
Yeah.
Then Twitter, then Snapchat, then Instagram. Then people are swiping a face.
Exactly.
I've gone through the evolution with these people, so I'm not an expert as much as I've just
Right.
experienced the things that if you're a college kid that's going to start dating, as a post-grad,
world, yeah.
I've done that.
You've done it,
If
yeah.
you're in I had a buddy who got a divorce. And he was like, I was about to have a kid, and now I'm swiping.
Right.
He has no idea what's going on. He's walked in. It's like he was frozen in time.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff, and there's just a lot of head trash with dating. And then what's gone on recently is Betches, which is a huge Instagram account. They asked me to co-host their dating show.
Fantastic.
So it's called the You Up Podcast, and we only do dating questions.
Okay.
And kind of discuss this stuff. And that's like, their audience is mainly female. So I think for a lot of women right now, and I think women are going crazy from dating right now because
Right.
we hold a lot of the cards.
Right.
I mean, there's an app right now called Bumble where if you match, the only way it's considered a feminist app. Okay. And it's like Tinder where you swipe, and if you get a match, the only way I can talk to the girl is if she talks to me first.
Oh, she has to initiate.
She has to. So that's considered feminist.
Oh, wow.
Except if you think about it as a guy,
Yeah.
all you've done is shorten my buying cycle. All you've done is you have a selling cycle in sales. You'd be like, okay, gotta open, gotta present, gotta close.
Yeah.
Now it's she's opening. She's saying, not only do I think you're hot enough to swipe right,
Right.
you're even more hot. You're hot enough for me to talk to
Right.
first. So it's like a girl going, I want to have sex with you, and then going, umi.
Me.
So women are put in this awful position, and I do think that their position is much worse than men right now, where you have guys sitting back and have the ability. We didn't need technology to let guys be more lazy.
Right.
Right. We're lazy enough. And it's like you're sitting there and you're swiping, and then you get a girl who talks to you, and then you talk to her while you keep swiping.
Right.
And girls are wondering, why isn't he making a date? It's because he's still swiping.
This is why he's good out there.
He's looking for a ghost,
Lying
a
in
hotter
bed
ghost.
swiping.
And he hasn't even met you yet. So, I mean,
my
so
goodness.
I do understand what's going on, and I think this new, this new audience that I'm being faced with now, because we just started in November.
Okay.
And it's bigger than J Train. It's much bigger. It's cool, but it's like, I think I'm the first man that a lot of these people have heard talk honestly about
Right.
what's going through our heads.
Right.
And I think that's scary to a lot of them because I don't really hold back. And I think it's also comforting to know that it's not them. Like, you're dealing with an animal.
Right.
So a lot of girls are like, well, what should I say for an opening line? And I'm like, whatever you want.
Whatever, yeah.
Because if he doesn't answer, keep swiping.
Yeah.
We're put in positions to meet more people than we've ever been or should have been able to meet.
We're not conditioned to actually take in this much.
There used to be 4 people on your grandfather's block.
Right.
And your grandmother had the best smile.
Exactly.
That was it. And now it's an endless line of faces that I swipe through. And then I'll swipe right on girls that I'm like, that's a girl I would have sex with. That's a girl I would go on a date with. That's a girl I would marry. And they're all swiped to the same pile.
Right.
Shouldn't we be putting them in different piles?
Pile.
That
Maybe
would be a good idea for a new app.
Yeah, you got a new app by there. You go.
Delete this part.
Yeah,
Get it out.
Well, listen, man, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time. It's been, I can't tell you. I mean, I've learned from you just watching you this week.
I'm learning from you.
It's been an
watching
education,
you
man.
on stage. It's so good. No, dude, I watch. I love it. I'm sitting there. It's like the pro's pro. You know, you're up there killing it. So
it's old school. I would be famous in the '90s.
No,
but you're doing it these days, man, and it's fun to watch.
I appreciate it. I'm trying. Sometimes I think that's the thing with comics, and the thing I get a little ashamed of a little bit. It's like there's this thing in comedy or stand-ups where it's like that guy's really trying hard. Like, you know, like, and it's like, yeah, I don't know, I don't have much else to do. I got a lot of time on my hands, and I don't mind putting stuff out, and I also don't mind failing, you know, so.
I had a guy come up to me last week after a show and said, I give you a lot of credit. That's a hard job. And I was like, it's not supposed to look like it.
Yeah.
What did I do?
The whole thing is supposed to look easy.
It's supposed to look easy.
Yeah.
But it's hours. It's, you know, it's like you say, it's hours and hours, and it's putting the time in, whether it's stand-up, whether it's social online. I mean, that's what it all goes towards something. And I look forward to watching where it goes with you, man.
Dude, thanks, man.
You work as hard as anyone I think I've ever seen, and it reminds me of a young me.
Oh, I appreciate it.
I usually sign off by saying, all I ever say is follow me on iTunes and rate and review, please. That's all I know what to say. What should I be saying at the end of my podcast?
Okay, so listen, if you're listening to this, we should put this at the beginning.
All right.
You got to put this at the beginning, because you got to remind these people, because right now they probably turned it off and they're like, I've had enough of this idiot.
Enough.
So listen, if you're listening right now, Michael Somerville did you the biggest favor of your day, okay? Free entertainment to get you through whatever you're going through. Are you at the gym? Are you on a plane ride? Are you on a train? Are you in a car ride? Whatever you're doing right now, and if you had a couple of laughs, you better pay up. And the way you pay is you go on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever you're using, and you rate, review, and subscribe, because that helps this podcast keep going. Mike's going to stop doing it if you don't do that. That's the truth.
Yes, I could never say these things, but
you have to say these things. It's the truth.
Yeah.
Why would we lie to these people? They got free entertainment, and the only thing they have to do is take their little finger and touch subscribe and put 5-star review or write loved it. You could write 2 words, loved it, and that's payment. Also, if you're on Instagram, take a picture of the screen right now and make it your Instagram story and let people know you're listening. That's something I've been telling people to do on my show.
That's a great idea.
I get people all the time. It's like, and they'll tag you, and you're at Somerville Puns.
Yeah.
So put that. So you put at, and you put it on your Instagram story, or your Snapchat story, or on Twitter.
Yeah.
You should be telling people you enjoy. And here's what happens with podcasters. This is where I can rant. If you've ever told people you have a podcast, right?
Sure.
They get weird. People get weird when you tell them, they're like, how can I find you? And I'll be like, well, I have a podcast. I don't listen to podcasts.
Wow.
No. And it's like, yeah, you don't use the buggy whip either anymore. Once you get with it,
right.
Your whole life is on demand. Now radio's on demand. So here's what you do. So a lot of people get weird. So this is a non-invasive way of letting people know what you're listening to by making your Snapchat story, your Instagram story, or your Twitter, like tweeting it out, or putting it on Facebook. But just a screenshot of your phone screen. Hey, I'm listening to Michael Somerville. This is a great podcast. You should all get involved. Yeah. That's another way to pay us. People, the thing is, like, I used to sell life insurance, so they would like say,
it's all starting to make sense now.
This is all life insurance technique. This is
all starting to make sense.
But they would always say to you, you don't get paid with just money. You get paid with referrals. Those are the best ways to get paid.
Yeah.
So even if you didn't make a sale with someone, if they enjoyed your work, so with these people here, they're enjoying your work.
Tell a friend.
It's 38 minutes in.
Yeah.
You got through that run because of us.
Yeah.
So here's how we get paid. You either rate, review, subscribe, which does help, because then it goes up on the iTunes charts, and then you screenshot the screen and you tweet it out and DM or whatever you have to do with the internet-wise, or you just tell a friend.
I love it. Well, you heard it here from J-Train, Jared Freid. Thank you again for stopping by,
it's a pleasure to come to your hotel room from a floor away.
We're all the way to floor downstairs, and we're going to go do some shows and make the people laugh live, and then we'll see you online. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you later on Greetings from Somerville.